Hello all, and welcome to the June and the second edition of the RES virtual monthly meetings. I trust you enjoyed our initial meeting, and I hope you are keeping warm during this winter and enjoying the show. A big thank you to all those members that gave feedback from the last month's show. It was greatly appreciated and helped us to understand the wide geographical spread of our membership and how we can incorporate everybody into feeling part of the activities. I stand here on our first day of normality in New Zealand with no COVID-19 cases reported, and in fact it is 18 days since our last case was reported. This means that the all clear has been given for us to resume normal activities, and certainly this morning the traffic on the motorway certainly indicates that is the case. This also augurs well for the RES being able to get back and plan our future activities. However, the forced shutdown has enabled us to look at the RES activities and the way we are doing things, and I must say the committee is keen to continue with some of the changes instigated. This month's members will receive a combined tatler and yarn while we review how our future communications to members will be. Of course, I'm still aware that not all members have access to digital means, and therefore printed copies will still be available for those who require them. We are looking ahead to what trips and tours can be planned, and of course at present John's planned Australian tours in September are looking more promising of proceeding as the COVID crisis declines. This month, many of you will receive membership renewals. I encourage you to continue your support as we evolve and meet the future needs of our members and continue with innovative and attractive rail and travel related excursions and tours. A big thank you to all of those who have donated to our GVR COVID-19 crisis appeal. The response has been most heartening, and I know a great number of RES members have been very generous in supporting the cause. The GVR board meets this week to work through what the financial situation is at GVR and what future activities we can plan. However, with the country now back to normal, the ability to now organise trips and open up the GVR again, things are far more promising. I will keep you updated monthly. This month's meeting content has again been arranged by Lindsay Benbrook, and I thank him and his team sincerely. Next month we will look at something different in content and possibly in format, with the film screening divided into two halves. Looking forward, the committee is keen to look at holding physical meetings again, albeit maybe every bi-monthly or 3-monthly, or on a basis whilst continuing with virtual monthly meetings as currently being screened. We thank Sean Heenan for his ongoing support in this venture. So now, take care, get your favourite hot drink and food ready, settle down, rug up, and enjoy an hour or so of rail action, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Bye.
Crossing the road rail double-deck bridge at Okahakura, DX 5080 begins the climb over the remote SOL line to Whangamomona as passenger shuttle number 8. The train had travelled from Hamilton with the Capital Connection cars and DFT 7322 on the rear, one of 3 separate excursions organised by the Railway Enthusiast Society to celebrate the Whangamomona Republic Day. Second to arrive at Okahakura was a pair of Silverfern railcars from Auckland, led by RM24. The SOL branch features 20 tunnels between Okahakura and Whangamomona. Once DX5080 had cleared the section to Ohura, RM30, now leading, headed up the branch as passenger shuttle number 1. Exiting tunnel number 6 at the 79-kilometre peg near Tangarakau. The third excursion over the branch was BO6 from Palmerston North with a set of wire wrapper cars behind DFM 7348 and DCP 4818. The trains were restricted to a maximum speed of 40 kilometres per hour where track conditions allowed. Below Tahora Saddle, the speed was down to 10 kilometres per hour as the excursion crept between tunnels 5 and 4. Approaching Whangamomona, BO6 berthed on the loop beside the other two trains. During the day-long celebrations, Whangamomona's population swells from 40 to over 3,000 people. First away was the Silverfern railcars with Dave Simpson at the controls. This was followed by passenger shuttle number 8, seen between tunnels 4 and 5. BO6 returned to Palmerston North via Stratford and the Taranaki line. With the scenic line now closed to passenger trains by national network operator OnTrack, these 3 excursions may be the last to be seen over the 143-kilometre branch for quite some time. The reenactment of the Parliamentary Special was an ambitious project that involved hundreds of volunteer hours over the past year, but was a fitting tribute of the effort that was involved in running the original train. To celebrate the centenary of the Parliament Special, OnTrack in association with Steam Incorporated, the Mainline Steam Trust, Fielding Steam Rail, the Silverstream Railway, the Museum of Transport and Technology and the Glenbrook Vintage Railway organised a 3-day excursion from Wellington to Auckland. Wellington Mayor Kerry Prendergast presents KiwiRail loco engineer Ross Allen with the tablet for the Wellington to Taihape section. The 2008 Parliamentary Special departed Wellington on Wednesday the 6th of August with around 140 passengers on board behind Steam Incorporated's JA 1271 that hauled the train to Fielding.
When OnTrack considered that we had a very special event to celebrate 100 years of the main trunk line, we decided it really was worthwhile to do, but we should try and ensure that all the local communities on the way were involved. Because the linking of the main trunk line was actually a move away from provincial attitudes to a national attitude. And it also represented the first big major infrastructure build within New Zealand, probably unmatched till the 1950s when the hydropower schemes. So it was very important. And we got a team going, particularly in our public relations area, and they've been working for over 12 months together with our operational people to make this a worthwhile, memorable trip. Because Heritage Rail is very much the means of taking rail back to the communities, and the support we've had from the communities all along the way, civic receptions at all the towns, and most of these towns of course were created as construction towns and shunting yards and refuelling, recoaling yards for the main trunk line, and so they owe their heritage back to it. And it's very difficult today, very unusual to talk to anybody who doesn't have an ancestor who actually worked for rail at some stage. So it's been thrilling the amount of support we've had for this whole journey. Everyone's thoroughly enjoyed it. The number of school children out on the road waving to us, the traffic following us, blinking their lights, camera lenses out of the windows of cars. It's been really a wonderful trip and a delight to be part of it. And OnTrack is very proud of the part they've played, and I must pay credit to the heritage movement, to the OnTrack staff, who've really thrown everything behind this and made this the trip it is.
Fielding Steam Rail Society's WAB 794 took over for the run to Taihape. As the Parliamentary Special made its trip north, 2 L-Class locos built in 1877 were being put through their trials between Owakuni and Horapiko. KiwiRail provided the locomotive engineers who helped ensure the success of the event. Hauling 2OM milk wagons containing water, plus OnTrack's FM van, the train weighed in at around 100 tonnes. The opening of the North Island main trunk ushered in the golden age of rail transport in the first half of the 20th century and played a pivotal role in New Zealand's economic and social development. The first passenger train to travel the 426-mile journey to Auckland departed Wellington on the 7th of August 1908. The Parliament Special carried politicians north to meet the United States Navy's Great White Fleet that was on a goodwill and peace tour of the Pacific.
Well, the Parliamentary Special had two points of fame. The first was that the parliamentarians wanted to go through to Auckland to see the Great White Fleet for the United States, and so the temporary line was put in, and it was in a sense finished early because of that. The second was that it marked really the near completion of the main line between Wellington and Auckland, and the opportunity to travel by train instead of by sea and by train on that route. It was a really significant part of New Zealand's transport history and if you like, constitutional or almost social history, because it linked two of the main centres that had previously been separated by a 30-hour train and very rough sea trip from New Plymouth to Onehunga at Auckland.
After an overnight stop at Taihape, Mainline Steam's KA 942 teamed up with 794 for the run to Awakuni. The Parliamentary Special featured one of the strongest and most varied lineups of steam motive power and carriages that is possible to put together in the modern era. 942 tubing out on the climb to Mataroa Tunnel. At Awakuni, both locos came off the train. 794 was turned, while 942 coupled up with the Silverstream Railway's L509 and the Museum of Transport and Technology's L507. The three locos proceeded from Awakuni to Horapito to await the arrival of 794 with the Parliamentary Special. Bunker leading, 794 hauled the train up the grade to Horapito, while 942 continued on as light engine to the loop at Makatoti. This was a historic day for the centenary excursion with the addition of the two L-class locomotives at Horapito. These two ex-Public Works Department locomotives were involved in the construction of the main trunk and may have hauled the 1908 Parliament Special over the temporary section of line. In 1908, the Public Works Department's engineer in charge of the central section, Frederick William Furkett, was instructed by the Minister of Works, the Honourable William Hall Jones, to complete as much as possible of the railway construction between Horapito and Makatoti to a standard that would enable a special train to run over it. Hall Jones wagered £1,000 if Furkett could complete the line in time. The rails met at the Manganui Otiao Viaduct 4 days before the Parliament Special was due to run.
It's been a wonderful achievement to come on this trip, especially if my father was responsible for the final completion of the railway line, in particular for making it possible for the Parliamentary Special to get through in 1908. I do know about the £1,000 wager, and I do actually have the telegram that Hall Jones sent to him saying, congratulations, well done, the money will be forwarded. So presumably he did get paid.
100 years after it was built, the Makatoti Viaduct still towers above the rugged country of the Central Volcanic Plateau.
It's been a wonderful PR tool, not only for the heritage movement, but it's been a great PR tool for On-Track. It's been so successful. So there's been some wonderful benefits come out of this trip from the heritage movement point of view, and I think from the amalgamation with heritage and On-Track, the railway company.
At Taumaranui, the Ruapehu District Council Mayor Sue Morris escorted the tablet to be inserted into the museum machines by Greg Hackett, who was passionate about preserving the history of railway signalling. An early morning departure from Taumaranui.
Oh, it's been amazing. I think that this has got to be so great for New Zealand. Lots of young kids have never seen steam engines, and riding in this particular carriage, which is 100 years old, been beautifully restored, just marvellous.
At Hamilton, hundreds of people crowd the platform, a sight that hadn't been seen since steam first returned to the main line in 1985. Here 942 came off the train and was replaced by mainline steam's JA 1275. At Papakura, the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Helen Clark, and invited guests joined the train for the final segment of the trip into Auckland's Britomart Transport Centre. Popular rail fan Merv Smith being interviewed for Maori TV's Native Affairs programme. At Penrose, 1275 came off the train and was replaced by Kiwi Rail DXB 5143 for the run into Britomart. This was due to steam locomotives not being permitted in the underground station. The arrival board displays the details of the parliamentary special that arrived 2 minutes ahead of its scheduled time. Helen Clark accepts the Wellington to Auckland tablet from Kiwi Rail's Westfield manager Colin Vickery to formally mark the completion of the Parliamentary Specials journey. Fielding Steam Rail ventured north to Hamilton with WAB 794 and their restored carriages and FM guards van. The train had been chartered to Lodge Tawhiri to celebrate their centennial in Hamilton. North of Hihatahi, the snow from an overnight fall provided a rare winter scene for a heritage steam excursion on the trunk. The stiff climb from Erewa to National Park. At speed into Raurimu, 794 hadn't ventured north from here since being restored and returned to service in 2003. Another servicing stop in an empty Tamaranui yard. As darkness falls, the train heads up the Ongarui Valley. During the weekend, 794 hauled an 11 total train from Hamilton to Tikawiti for members of Lodge Tawhiri and the public. Two return trips were scheduled on both Saturday and Sunday. Mount Pirongia dominates the skyline as the excursion approaches Te Awamutu. The final return trip on Sunday afternoon departing Tikawiti for Hamilton. On Monday, the train returned to Fielding and is seen passing through Te Awamutu. Departing Tikawiti Yard and the start of the long climb to Pukitutu. And climbing again from Pukitutu to Kaupaki. At Ongarui, the crew had over 3 hours to wait due to the concrete sleeper track laying machine breaking down in the next section. Running well behind schedule and with a fresh Kiwi Rail crew on the footplate, the train pulls into Taumarunui station after being serviced in the yard. On the long climb from Kākahi to Ofongo. And silhouetted against the last remnants of the evening sky between Ofongo and Oeo. Travelling south from Christchurch to Dunedin is Mainline Steam's 2009 New Zealand tour train with rail fans from Great Britain, Australia and Europe. A photo run by on the Waireka Bank south of Oamaru. AB 663 was en route in light steam to take part in the Middlemarch Rail Festival. A great vantage point from the old State Highway overbridge at Tumai. The Vulcan looking at home on the tracks that it regularly ran over from 1956 until 1976.
We had a successful 2006 station centennial, so there was a bit of pressure on to do something similar, and I always had an idea that we needed to do something up Central, and Vulcan rail cars always featured big in that, so that was sort of the idea eventuated from a station centennial to having something at Middlemarch. Dunedin was a bit harder to do now after 2 years, you know, the drivers are retiring, so Middlemarch was a bit simpler an idea, but still have something interesting for people to look at. The reasons I run these events is just to see people reminisce and have a good time, and hopefully we get some future railway enthusiasts out of it all in the end.
During the 3 days of Labour weekend, Mainline Steam's AB 663 ran the morning service from Dunedin to Middlemarch. Saturday saw the running of the only mixed train during the weekend over the 19-kilometre section between Middlemarch and Pukerangi. The Middlemarch Rail Festival attracted over 5,000 people during the weekend. The festival celebrated the 130th anniversary of the turning of the first sod in 1879 at Wingatui to build the railway line through to Cromwell. On Tuesday, the 27th of October, Mainline Steam returned north to Christchurch with their New Zealand tour train, seen exiting Mansfield Bay Tunnel. A photo run by on the start of the climb to Warrington. Kiwi Rail locomotive engineer Mark Scottson slowly moves KA 942 away from Mainline Steam's Christchurch depot. The 4 scheduled winter excursions to Arthur's Pass generate such a huge interest each year that an extra trip had to be arranged in September to cope with the high demand for seats. Swinging away from the South Island main trunk at Rolleston and onto the Midland line. Passengers who have never experienced the excitement of a photo run-by make the most of the 2 or 3 photo stops built into the schedule. The big windowed transcenic carriages allow passengers to take in the river gorges, remote lakes, viaducts and the mountain scenery that rail can only provide. At 737 metres above sea level, Arthur's Pass is the highest station in the South Island. While the engine is turned and serviced, passengers have an opportunity to visit Arthur's Pass Alpine Village. From high above Lake Sarah, the excursion is seen returning to Christchurch after passing through Cass Station Yard. Springfield Station signals the end of the mountainous section of the Midland Line. Mark Scottson eases 942 away from Springfield for the long, gentle downgrade section of track to Rolleston Junction. The remains of the day's sun refract on the excursion as it passes through the country settlement of Kirwi. In November 1932, amid a blaze of publicity, the first of 30 K-class locomotives emerged from the Hutt Railway workshops for North Island service. Considering the extremely restricted loading gauge dimensions imposed on the designers, the K was indeed a magnificent achievement. Between 1939 and 1950, a further 35 KA class were built for North Island service, and 6 KB class in 1939 to operate between Springfield and Arthurs Pass on the Midland Line in the South Island. These scenes were filmed in the last years of steam operation. The Glenbrook Vintage Railway completed operating their 39th season during Queen's Birthday weekend. At the head of the vintage train was WW644. During the year, the railway was used to produce a Canadian beer commercial.
At Sleeman, we've always been passionate about brewing great beer, and every bottle has a story. Back in the 1800s, on the way to our brewery, hops would fall by the railside. Those hops are still growing wild there today. They're the inspiration for our new Railside Session Ale, the flavourful and distinctly hopped brew. We hope you'll enjoy it as much as we did making it. Sleeman Railside Session Ale. It's notoriously good.
The Plains Railway celebrated 45 years since the Ashburton Railway and Preservation Society was formed. In 1971, a group of rail fans got together to save a section of the former Mount Somers branch line and to also restore to operating condition a Dubs & Co A-Class 040 tank engine. The plans for Labour weekend was to operate a Rail Fans Day on the Saturday and public running on Sunday and Monday. There was plenty to capture with A64 and Rogers K88 providing the action. A64 was built by Dubs & Co Glasgow in 1873, shipped to New Zealand and commenced working on New Year's Day 1875. It saw service in Christchurch, Timaru, Oamaru, Dunedin and Invercargill before being sold to a grain store company at Littleton. In 1900 it was purchased by the Canterbury Meat Company to work at their Fairton works near Ashburton. It was finally retired in 1960 but remained as a backup locomotive until 1962, when it was donated to the Ashburton Steam and Model Engineering Club, who in turn leased it to the Ashburton Railway and Preservation Society. K88 was built by the Rogers Locomotive and Machine Works in the USA in 1877. And entered service in 1878, being the first American-built engine to operate in New Zealand. The K-Class was designed especially for fast passenger duties between Christchurch and Dunedin. It was written off in 1926 and towed to the banks of Southland's Oriti River, where it was dumped for the protection of the embankment. In 1974, the remains of K88 were dug out and transported to the Plains Railway. And so began the enormous task of restoring it to working order, a massive job headed by the late Bob Anderson. Completion of the project in 1982 gained New Zealand's rail heritage movement rare international attention. The Minister of Railways formally opened the 2.5 kilometre long Plains Railway in 1973. The Canterbury Steam Preservation Society operates a bush tramway at Maclean's Island in Christchurch. The 1943 A&G Price built geared logging locomotive operated on Ogilvy and Company's bush tramway on the west coast of the South Island near Gladstone. This footage covers a Railway Enthusiast Society excursion over the tramway in 1958. This railcar was designed and built by Bill Ogilvy and was powered by a Chevrolet 6-cylinder petrol engine connected to a 3-speed gearbox. It could be driven from either end and was used to transport bushmen to the remote felling areas in the native forest. The railcar and Price V148 were both acquired by the Society during the 1970s and are seen coupled together in this early Maclean's Island footage. "20 traction engines were in steam, and a number were put through their paces, including the showman's engine Quo Vadis. Christchurch Live steamers were also in operation, operating on their 1 kilometre long 7¼ inch gauge railway. The weekend steam extravaganza closed with a double header featuring Fowler number 548 and Price V148. Oamaru Steam and Rail operates a small vintage railway in the heart of historic Oamaru. K92 has replaced the Society's 1924 Hudswell Clark steam locomotive B10 that is undergoing its 10-year survey as well as an overhaul. Built in 1878, K92 is on a short-term loan from the Waimea Plains Railway in Southland. The railway continues along the bottom of clay cliffs beside Oamaru's Victorian Harbour and ends at the terminus beside the Red Sheds. Built in 1880, these sheds house various local crafts. K92 propels the train back to Harbourside Station. Oamaru Steam and Rail operates every Sunday with 5 return trips. Steam Incorporated travelled north from Paikokariki to Glenbrook to reposition their train for the Christchurch Press Readers' Rail Tour. The modern Northern Explorer crossing the Heritage Rail Adventure excursion at Taihape. The train was stabled for a few days at the Glenbrook Vintage Railway, prior to collecting their tour party and heading to Whangarei. This was possibly the last passenger train permitted to journey over the North Auckland line. Passengers continue their journey to the Bay of Islands, while the opportunity was taken to run a number of passenger shuttles south to Portland for the local community. Crossing the causeway with Marsden Point Oil Refinery in the distance. The train returned south on Sunday the 2nd of April for the remainder of the Lower North Island rail tour. To coincide with the Glenbrook Vintage Railway Steam and Vintage Country Festival, Robert Sweet coordinated a Railfans Day that attracted over 60 supporters. With 2 visiting locomotives from the Museum of Transport and Technology's Western Springs Railway, it was an opportunity to use these locos to haul classic NZR passenger and mixed trains. L507 hauls the immaculate 60-foot car van reminiscent of the motor train that New Zealand Railways introduced in Auckland, the Waikato and Wellington in 1907. Y542 in charge of the mixed train. The next sequence saw Y542 leading and L507 pushing from the rear. The last run of the day saw both engines double heading. The Bush Tramway Club's ex-Mamaku Bush Jigger provided another interesting angle for the rail fans. Following on from the rail fans' day, Ross Crook arranged the GVR Steam and Vintage Country Festival, an event that happens once every 4 years. JA's 1250 and 1240 depart Pukeowari Depot with the first empty service to Glenbrook. With 3 separate trains, plus the Mamaku Bush Jigger operating over the line during the weekend, a comprehensive train control plan made for a smooth operation. One of the features of the weekend was a working example of the world's first steam engine. Invented by Thomas Newcomen in 1712, his engine can be credited with kick-starting the Industrial Revolution. Its main function enabled water to be extracted from coal mines and later tin mines. Newcomen engines were built in Great Britain and Europe until James Watt dramatically improved the design in 1769. This 5.5 metre tall example was constructed over 2 years by members of the Auckland Steam Engine Society. In the paddocks opposite Glenbrook Station, the Franklin Vintage Machinery Club had an extensive working display from earlier times in New Zealand's agricultural history. The Steam and Vintage Country Festival provides an experience of our pioneering past for the younger generations. The trains were filled to capacity on every trip, with a large number of passengers experiencing their first ride behind steam.